All right. So I believe we are going in just a second. There we go. Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is February 15th, 2021, and today on the show we've got Seriah Azkath with us. He's joining us from Where Did the Road Go Radio. Seriah, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
Man, it's great to have you on. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. We had a guest cancel, and I believe I messaged you right at the last minute, and you were gracious enough to join us tonight. So I definitely want to thank you again for that. It's very, very nice of you to spend some time with us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I told you, hit the one day I had open this week.
Awesome. We also have Jared Murphy with us tonight. Jared, how are you? How was your dinner with your mother?
Oh, way to out me. Yes, it was great. It was, it's President's Day vacay family event.
Awesome. You know, Seriah, I wanted to get you on for quite some time now because I love talking to other radio show hosts because it seems like since I've started doing conflict radio that I have learned so much about things that I thought I knew about, and I always like getting other hosts on to try to find out what it is that you've learned. Like when you first started Where Did the Road Go? I'm sure you had, I guess, preset notions on things and preset beliefs. How has that changed?
Oh, it's changed completely. Like I'm constantly changing my views based on new information. Like I had, for example, like going into this, I had no problem with things like hypnosis, and now I'm absolutely against people getting hypnotized for memory recall because it doesn't work.
You don't think it works at all?
It doesn't work. It's been proven not to work.
All right.
It is.
Any
It's a behavior modification tool. Hypnosis works as that. It works as an altered state of consciousness, but it does not recall memories that are not consciously remembered.
All right. And I just want to let everybody know that on your website, wheredidtheradiogo.com, if you
Where'd the
go,
road go?
yeah, wheredidtheroadgo.com, it says here that Seriah has been studying the unknown for over 30 years and is currently working on a couple of books about it. His
Yeah.
studies have spanned the world of the unexplained. UFOs and lost civilizations have been a strong focus throughout, but he has delved into most subjects involved in this work. He has also had a lifetime of strange experiences. So it says you've had a lifetime of strange experiences. Can you give us an idea of what you mean?
I've just had weird stuff happen to me pretty constantly most of my life. I mean, when I say constantly, I don't mean daily, but there's a regular flow of little strange things punctuated with some really strange things over the years. I also have active Kundalini energy, which does weird stuff and does weird stuff to other people around me. I've seen everything from you. I've never seen any kind of cryptid that I'm aware of, but I've had UFO encounters. I've had plenty of poltergeist stuff, and just stuff that I don't even know what is. Just weird, weird stuff.
All right, so let's start with your UFO encounter. Could you tell us about it?
That's one of the simple ones. I was driving to the radio station one Saturday night, and I was getting blinded from I'm between two of the Finger Lakes, and from the direction of Cayuga Lake, I was getting blinded, and I thought it was a car coming up from one of the lake houses because that'll happen sometimes. And it just kept blinding me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, turn your brights off, jeez. And finally, I look, and there's this gigantic pile of lights in the sky that must have spanned. I don't. It was enormous. I can't give you a measurement, but it was enormous, and it was the brightest thing I think I've ever looked at. And I'm like going, okay, that's not a helicopter, not a plane, not a what the hell am I looking at? And I realized it was so bright I couldn't see if there was an object there, but I could see lights that were in a stable configuration with other lights spinning around the middle of it. And I pulled over and I watched it for a few minutes, and it slowly just dropped down into the lake, which is when I realized just how big it was, because it was probably a good mile or so away and it was taking up half the sky.
That's awesome. Was it triangular at all?
No, it was, if anything, it was like two saucers with their open ends to one another with the light spinning around in between where those ends would be.
All right. So we were talking a little bit before we went live about what you think aliens and UFOs, what they really are. You don't think that they're from outer space. You think that it's more likely that it's from a past civilization, correct?
Well, I don't think it's more. I think it's more likely to be from a past civilization. I think we're dealing with a number of different things when we talk about the UFO phenomena. Um, a lot of it, especially nowadays, is probably our technology. Especially with, I mean, if you look at the stuff that's commercially available and how easily some of that stuff could be mistaken as anomalous, and then imagine what the government must have, or some of these bigger corporations must have that we don't know anything about. I think a lot of it falls into that category. But of course, this is a phenomenon we've had with us since the beginning of recorded history and likely before. So I suspect that, yeah, there's a lot of other things it could be. It could be a form of intelligence that just looks mechanical. It could be something that's bringing us to an altered state of consciousness. I've often said that I think the UFO encounter experience is sort of a modern day shamanistic experience that's sort of been hijacked by our culture. As far as an ancient civilization, it certainly could be a part of that. I would think that more than I would think extraterrestrial. I don't really see a lot of evidence for it being extraterrestrial unless you disregard a whole lot of the data.
All right. And I suppose I guess I'm echoing a little bit, but I just want to give a shout out to Ivan and Adam and Audine and Betty Spaghetti and the Happy Plague Doctor and I Love You and everybody that's in the chat room. Long Island Bigfoot, how you doing? I won't be answering you guys in the chat box because I've got a million open windows on the computer right now and I'm trying to shuffle them all. But I just want to get Jared in on this. Jared, what do you think of what he just said about the UFOs?
Well, I can't agree more. I mean, I wrote a whole book. It's not aliens, worse, it's us discovering our lost history.
I like the title.
I just think that there isn't the significant level of technology that we continuously are staring at in the ground. And it's the obvious stuff like the polygonal masonry and it's the engineered soils, it's the Paracas. It's could anyone finish some genetic testing on the Paracas and all the elongated skulls that were not forced but born that way? I mean, the reality is that the snapshot of the last period of time that we call modern society, if you count it back to Sumer, is a joke. We have cities underwater, cities off of Cuba, cities in India, cities that are megalithic construction on every continent that we know of, and more in marine archaeology that we've had fractional looks at, and all of it pointing to a worldwide culture we have no record of that clearly could move mountains, could clearly not just move, but plan and measure based on technological advances, do much more significant things than we can today. And we have genetic, whether it's paranormal or some people call it a spiritual experience, whether it is that or whether it's some sort of dormant what we now call a superhuman ability, like the Wim Hof stuff we've talked about. The reality is that all of it points to a much higher advanced human race, and some of them made it, but the assumption is the best and the brightest. I mean, after some catastrophic event or some war, the reality is that it could have been the guy who made drinks, not the guy who distilled whiskey. It could have been the guy that may have worked on a laptop or serviced them, but didn't produce them or know how to work in a foundry. The amount of rebuilding after multiple catastrophes over tens of thousands of years leaves us with two things: a prior society that may be here in remnants and kind of showing themselves here and there because they don't care, or vice versa. There is exactly what you just mentioned, was high technology that may have been reverse engineered, that is likely, just like Olaf Phillips likes to talk about, there's the very likelihood that our worldwide global militaries have clearly picked up on some things that they found. And how much of what we see is advanced human, like our gen tech, and how much of it is, ancient civilization tech. It's all out there, but the difference is that we're all finally talking about it versus oh, it's just aliens. It's like, well, that's one hell of an easy jump, isn't it? We came up with the 100th monkey theory to explain pyramids. It was easier to jump to collective human consciousness in the 60s to explain pyramids on every continent than it was to say, oh, no, there couldn't have been a whole worldwide race. No. It was collective human consciousness and the 100th monkey theory. Not that there isn't collective human consciousness, but we actually jumped to that before we jumped to, well, it couldn't have possibly been a whole giant high-tech civilization moving mountains. That's not possible. But it is.
We can't possibly have anything wrong.
Yeah. I no, we got it all worked out. Would you just don't look at the man behind the green curtain? And it's an art museum, not a history museum.
Yeah.
They took the, when I was a kid growing up at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, which is really an incredible, it's obviously not what you're going to see. Well, it's not true. We're not obviously going to New York. It's not the same thing. But the MIA in Minneapolis is stunning because the industrialists at the turn of the century, James J. Hill and a lot of people, and the Daytons and the Hudson, there was tons of people put a lot of money. We got some really great stuff. We have Rembrandts, but we got a mummy. And the thing is, the mummy had a scan, and it showed the mummy. So the mummy is in a case in the Egyptian Antiquities art wing. Or no, they now call it the African wing. And along with some wood-carved totem poles, there's a mummy, but no context because someone was offended that that's a body, so they took down the CAT scan of the mummy. And yeah, that's the society we live in right now.
Yes.
I mean,
and Seriah,
not to complain.
Seriah, I've been listening to your podcast all day, so I don't know if it was something I heard on your podcast or something I was reading on my Facebook wall today, but I was also reading about how we've had these great technological advances in everything that there is since the 50s, except for like planes and cars. Why is that?
That's a good question. I mean, we've had them, but there are things like self-driving cars.
Yeah, or the elite are keeping all that stuff secret, and they're whipping around in these Tic Tac UFOs that they're releasing today, and they're not sharing that technology with us.
It's always a possibility.
Yeah. So I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Fox. I see you in here. All you guys in the chat room, go ahead and like the YouTube video because it does help get more people in here. And if you have any questions for any of us, just go ahead and write them in the chat box, and I'll read them, and we'll get them going. That's why we like doing the live version of the show here tonight. So we get you guys involved. That'd be great. And Mr. Fox says, "Big petroleum." You know, that's another thing. I mean, you got to wonder if these Exxon execs and all these guys from BP and all these people are running around with their advanced tech while making us drive around their gas guzzlers so that they can keep making money.
Oh, certainly. That's change is always unwelcome in these big companies. I mean, when you look at media, when VCRs came out, instead of embracing that technology, the movie companies and stuff lost their minds because they thought they were going to lose money, and they tried to make them illegal. And that continued with every new format down to MP3s. There was literally they were trying to put into law to make it MP3s illegal when MP3s came out. Instead of embracing it and going, what can we do with this? They want to keep what they have, and they don't want anything to change because it's working for them.
Yeah, I guess anything where there's big money being made, there's going to be, I guess, problems with getting things through that are going to affect that bottom line, right?
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to have to change what they're doing. They have everything set already. It's going to cost them money to do new things. I mean, now they have no problem embracing MP3s, and now they're trying to get rid of everything else.
What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, it's. I've been warning about this for. I think it's important for us to bring up that if they keep saying, "Hey, we're 10 to 15% conscious," and then we make these extrapolations. I've used the blinky board analogy where you bang on the blinky board and it makes an orange light, makes a red light. You've done the same ceremony for 1,000 years, and somebody walks up and says, "Well, that's a 747, and that's the control panel," and they like heretic, and the reality is that we are getting a reaction out of a very complex biological system on a planet that was once completely terraformed. And so we have different labels for it based on our personal genetic expression. We see something as mystical, or something as paranormal, or something is spiritual, or something is technical. It's a personal experience where each of our consciousness falls. But I don't think we were at 10 to 15% conscious, which now has two problems. One is we have abilities like synesthesia and superhuman stuff like Stig Severinsen and Wim Hof that are re-explaining and showing people how to do this stuff in mass. The problem is that the very, very, very high elite, I honestly don't think are more advanced mentally than we are. They are at a comfort level. They do not need to grow. They've been where they are based on what we know in the last 200 years of the global system of government, which is the monetary system, power structure system, is so married into, I think, a lethargic behavior that they get what they get. Maybe for them, maybe they live, I guess I can imagine, maybe better in 100 or 115 years, but I don't think they're actually living more well. They're not actually hiding. They're not being replaced by robots. They're not keeping their heads alive in Futurama jars. They are just, they got a system that I completely agree. They just have a system that works for them. They don't want to embrace anything new. And I don't think as we gain back our abilities and our consciousness and our abilities to connect literally directly through to each other, where we become more conscious again. And I do think it's a practice, and it's not just a woo-woo, like we're going to get there because we meditate a lot. It's a combination of how we eat, what we eat, nutrients, there's a lot to discuss as to how we get back to full consciousness, and partially we have external technology, nanotechnology, biotechnology that is really nanotechnology that's blurring the lines, like Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near sort of stuff. And all of that is going to drive us towards a point where this BS system, where they think it's based on money, I hate to say it, I should be happy, but I do think ultimately it's going to get a little Star Trek-y, where your skills are going to be your commodity, and those skills are not going to be needed for you to, have a giant mansion in the hills. I don't think that's what it's going to look like. But we are really down in the mud, and it's very elementary. The goals are very simplex. It's super annoying because we live in a world where everyone could be fed. Everything could be at least basic education, but the system is being driven secretly, I think, by groups of people that actually think that we need a smaller population. And I keep warning that collective human consciousness, the total human, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, RAM that's available, is the reason we have been able to broaden, I think, our abilities. It's not just a few smart people building on top of smart people to come up with graphene conductors and nano switching for quantum computers and spintronics. I think it's total collective human consciousness. So there are people who devalue the average guy banging rocks in the rainforest. They think they're worth nothing and that they're expendable, and that you can experiment on them, and you can just, we need less people. And it's like, well, I don't think that's the case. If you look at this worldwide global culture that was here, it involved every continent. That LiDAR scan in Guatemala, 60,000 buildings are like, well, crap, there could be 15, 20 million people here. That's an 800 square mile scan of a very small Central American country. And they're doing 5,000 square miles, and they're at 15 to 20 million now, and that's just Guatemala. How many billions or hundreds of millions lived on this planet post-flood, let alone the last flood, or let alone what happened around 50, 60,000 years ago? You could take every human being on the planet, and I credit Michael Tellinger with this. Every human being on the planet could fit on just one single two Texases. Basically, they could fit in southern Africa, in two South Africas. If you gave everybody an acre, you could have 8 billion people take up an acre each, and they would be in two South Africas. We are not a very populated world, but there are people running around with their 15 to 20% consciousness screaming that we need to take down a third of the planet. And that is a very dangerous attitude from people who are barely conscious anymore. It's just, there's my rant on that.
I would say less population is good for the planet, just as a general thing, because of how much we pollute it. But I think that type of thing, like lessening the population, can be done just by conscious choices to have less children and things like that to improve the conditions of the planet. Because we're not all in a small area like South Africa. We're spread out and we create lots of pollutants. And until that system changes, or we expand out where we can live on other planets, or the moon or stuff like that, I think overpopulation is a bit of an issue.
Well, then if we're going to get into the specifics of who's poisoning the planet, you have to be not very politically correct and look at the third world and look at who's producing and what's coming where on the jet stream. The reality is that there are only a few countries responsible for the majority of this. And then by looking back at our ancient past, one of my primary studies is terra preta. This is an ancient engineered soil that not only can self-replicate, but part of its abilities, besides being the best growing soil on the planet, is to filter heavy metals and carbon dioxide. And this is a soil that's located on every continent. They're discovering it just in the Brazilian area. They now estimate it's at least twice the size of Great Britain is the area that they've discovered. It can be over 12 feet thick. And the reality is that we did have a much larger population than we currently have. We do have engineered soil on every portion of the planet. And necessity is also the mother of invention. I mean, the practicality of us, the way we are producing energy, the way we look at combustion versus, the whole vortex thing, the Victor Schauberger systems, the way we're even understanding magnetism and what we do for technology now. Yeah, I agree that we're polluting the planet, and we're doing a lot of things with technology that I think is, we've had electricity for how long? I live in a major metropolitan area, and they split the trees. Trees look ridiculous. They're V's now. They're like we're way over 100 years now in electricity, and their biggest solution, their best solution from the day we invented it to today in a century, is to just keep chopping trees and running lines like we're a train set station from 1920. I mean, we do not tackle technology at the front, but the idea that we aren't producing, we're more than producing enough food to feed everyone. We're more than capable of using better technologies than we have, but
Yep.
part of it is looking at how was the earth itself managed in the past, and what is it that we're doing now, and having a specific conversation about, is it the general population that's the problem versus, I spent a month in Bangalore, India, and when 10 million people in one city rip up auto rickshaws that are running nothing but two-stroke, burning blue, literally 15 hours a day, that's a problem. And it's not just there, but it's just that we have to have a very not PC conversation about the countries that are doing the worst of the polluting. And even if we do that, then we have to look at the technologies themselves. And like we already talked about, there are better technologies than gas engines for us, but we're not doing that. And so right now, 10 to 15% conscious people make very, I think, murderous decisions and say, we need less people. Well, how about we're more responsible with our technology? It's just
That'll cost them money. They don't want to do that.
That's so frustrating.
Well, let me
That's what it comes down to is money, and they're going to do whatever's cheaper. They don't care about human life.
So what?
Yeah.
You were mentioning that we need to have less kids. What, would the whole world go to like a one-kid policy, or?
Oh, I don't think it should be anything that's enforced. Like I said, I think it should be conscious choices.
Yeah.
And you have, until we can get things straightened out, like I wouldn't want to bring kids into this world at this point.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is figure out something better to do with all of our garbage.
Yes, absolutely. The amount of technological waste we create is ridiculous because, again, companies want you to buy their newest things. So they make, phones that only really work for a few years, and then you have to get new ones. Same with computers and all this other tech.
Michael, apparently they're saying that your voice is far away in the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. Maybe I just need to. I mean, you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I guess I just seem far away on the. Maybe it's in the board or something. I'll work on that while while you guys yap it up a little bit. So where do we go? I mean,
I don't think there's any really easy answers to any of this stuff. I mean, because the people who have all the control are the ones who don't want things to change.
do you think that the ones that are in control are trying to hold back our consciousness from evolving?
I don't even know if they think that way.
Like if they're thinking that far ahead, you mean?
Yeah, I think that's just a side effect. Make us mindless consumers. That's what they're thinking. How do they keep us in control and make the most money from us?
Yeah. So what do you think about, I guess, the whole theory of the hollow Earth, and that there could be a huge civilization living under there that the Nazis found when they went up to Antarctica?
I love the hollow Earth theory. I don't know if there's anything to it, but I absolutely love it. And I mean, there's a lot of space down there. Who knows what might be inside the Earth? We don't really know, and we haven't dug that far into it. So,
at least not publicly, and it's totally true. It's like we want to know, and we don't have real answers. We have some solid suspicions, I think.
I'm just going to talk for a minute while I got this open and see if I can't look at my audio levels. Yeah, I guess it looks pretty low for some reason. Who knows why. Anyway, guys, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Jared.
No, I just, there are some things that we all want answers for. There are no easy solutions when it's been pretty clear that there are a lot of people that are comfortable doing literally the minimum in what they're told. And outside of that, if we just stick with America, 8 of the top 10 things that kill Americans, I mean, the majority of it can be chalked up to our very diet. It's bananas. And of that, the most evil drug on the planet is sugar. It's crazy. I mean, as addictive and same stimulating areas in the brain as cocaine. And it's even the World Health Organization. I remember when the documentary, it blew my mind when Katie Couric narrated Fed Up. And then, comes out, and at the time, the documentary had said the World Health Organization recommends no more than 32 to 35 collective grams of sugar a day. And at that point, I had already been paleo for a long time, and I already knew, being paleo, that your total intake, carb or straight sugar, otherwise, total sugar intake, should, from all the science that I knew of, was like 25, 23 grams, like 28, 30 is max. And then it was about a year and a half after that documentary Fed Up, and that was, 2012-ish, 2011. And then when the World Health Organization revised and said, well, actually, we think sugar shouldn't be more than 25 to 30-something grams. And it's like, shocking, surprise, surprise, cancer, mutations, all these other things, diabetes, all these other ancillary diseases, heart disease, and all this other stuff. And we have a consumer base that is consuming not just sugar, but I mean, we could have a whole show on what is the excesses that the human race buys in food, just in ingesting. We don't look at food as we would if we all owned a Ferrari. You would never put transmission fluid in the gas tank, or gas in the oil, or oil in the brake fluid. You would never do that to a Ferrari. You would maintain it. You would take care of it. But how about if you treated your Ferrari just like you treat your body? Once a week, once a day, I deserve a snack. I'm going to go out and open up my Ferrari's hood and hit it with a hammer. Nope, I'm going to hit it with a sledge. I'm going to hit it on the engine block. I'm going to hit it on a door, because I deserve to treat myself. You would never do that to that car, but you will on a daily basis, weekly basis, yo-yo life basis. We'll do that to the human body. And what collectively, it's part of a general excess where even on the elementary levels, we're not taught how to really truly self-diagnose or have wisdom or care for ourselves. It's just I don't know. What do you think?
I think on top of everything else there's a difference between like the high fructose corn syrup and pure sugar. And the high fructose corn syrup is what's in most things and is even worse.
Yeah. Yep. And so there we have this system that is, again, it's the money. It's what is exactly what you said. It's how can we produce a product, make a profit, don't change anything, the ball's rolling. But and then at some point, I don't think it is about the money. At some point, they have so much money, it's now about the power. Now they
Yes.
have conglomerates and co-ops and systems where it's not just one executive's profit, it's the control and the power to not allow competition, not allow innovation, not allow anything to improve outside of another corrective market of medicine that allows itself to build systems of treatments, not cures, just treatments for these conditions that are self-perpetuating. So it's a pretty fun system, and it doesn't help. It's funny because I was reflective today on the internet and deciding I'm shocked that they let it go through. It's like you had everyone individually isolated by making them deal with the morning paper on a daily basis. We were much more isolated, but we thought more. Now, I don't know. It's interesting that they collectively, in my mind today, I was thinking that they decided, no, let's get them all connected because it's easier to disseminate what we want. But I don't think they fully appreciated the yin and yang of us being able to talk and connect. And I don't know what the end game is on actually muting us, from shutting the shows down, us not chatting, people not listening. It doesn't make any sense. I don't see do you see an end game? I don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, maybe they could just keep giving us sugar, and that's their end game, right?
Sugar and distractions.
I guess I'm. Well, I think I just popped my mic up a little bit there. If everybody can help me in the chat room, that might help a little bit.
You're definitely louder on my end.
You came through a little bit higher.
Yeah. Well, Chuck Bam wants to know: are you getting the shot?
Wait, which? Yeah, you? Yeah.
You mean the vaccine?
Yeah.
I mean, probably eventually, yeah. I'm not in the high risk category, and I already had COVID, so I'll get it eventually.
I don't know. It scares me to death. I'd like to see a few more people survive it than.
Well, I had it
before
too.
we really start getting into it. At least on my end, I'm going to try to avoid it as long as I can. Honestly.
I had it also, and not fun, but like you said, it would be. I guess I grew up in that generation that got to hear all about smallpox and all about polio, and that was all terrifying. So for me, it's like everybody got their polio vaccine, and everybody got their, the disease, yellow fever, smallpox, all the stuff that you heard about from settlers and going west, and I just, like you said, I actually am confused now. I just saw some information today. I'm not sure if it is I'm not sure if it is or a treatment. I don't want to be more specific as we're discussing it on the platform, but I've now found out that it is not actually possibly just as it's described. It's a course of treatment. Which is one of the ways it got expedited. But, of course, moveon.org, I guess we can't talk about it, right?
Yeah, that's probably a topic we should avoid talking about. Otherwise, we can't talk about stuff like this. They'll take us down. So, I mean, that's kind of where we're at today, I suppose. Got to be careful what you talk about. And Adane says we need the 90 essential nutrients, vitamins, and minerals for our body, and so we do not get them in our food, but we need them. There's a lot in the food that we're not getting anymore. I was reading somewhere that the amount of nutrients we get from one tomato today, or from one tomato back in like the 60s, we need 17 tomatoes today to get the same nutrients that's in that one tomato, from 30 years ago, and that's. We're going to have a big problem with the quality of our food, I think.
Yep, that's some Dr. Joe Wallach stuff right there. Yeah. That's right. The 90 for life vitamins and all that. And do you know where 90% of our country's tomatoes are grown?
I have no idea.
Take a guess. Florida. in sand. Did you know that genetically, if you modify a tomato, you can make it ripe? You can make it look very pretty and like a very delicious tomato, but there's a reason people end up with more delicious vegetables and foods when they grow them in their own backyard. Generally, they have better soil. But when you grow things in sand, there's only so many nutrients, and we think, oh, there's like 14 to 16 if you want to argue about essential minerals that can be added for soil cycling. And then, you grow your food, and then that's all you need. And then, Dr. Joe Wallach has done work for years, and the paleo crowd has been into this for the last decade, since Sisson wrote The Primal Blueprint. And the whole idea of getting food that looks healthy but actually isn't because the total vitamin content is not there is a fact. And that falls right in with our sugar conversation. It does matter because those activations for, those higher senses and experiences, all that's part of gene expression. And we're just working this stuff out along with the magnetic frequency stuff and vibrational medicine. It's all relevant to your experience on a daily basis and what you're aware of.
All right, so I'm going to try to divert our attention onto a different topic here because I don't want to talk about this too much today. We've got Seriah on, and I want to talk about what's going on with Mars. This is a big week for Mars, and I guess we're landing a new rover there, right? I believe that's what we're doing. What do you think?
I think there's 3 coming up, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. One of them's going into a lake bed where they say is prime for researching fossils and looking for fossils. Seriah, I think that humanity eventually, I think we came from Mars. I think that Mars was once a flourishing, well-inhabited planet, and there was something going on, and they wound up seeding Earth, and this is, I think that this is where, at least I do, that's what I think. I think we originally came from Mars millions of years ago. What do you think?
I think it's a possibility. I would actually lean toward Velikovsky's explanation as to what happened to Mars, that it came in close contact with Venus, because you have evidence of electrical scarring across the surface, which could have been done by coming close to another planet.
On Mars?
Yeah.
Well, we have that in Utah. There's that big crater in southeast Utah. I'm gonna have to look it up and tell you exactly where it is. But they say that crater was formed by something called planetary lightning, where there was a lightning strike between Mars and Earth. Quite a while ago. Have you heard of that?
Yes, it's possible. A lot of that stuff that we've assumed was erosion may have been in some cases, but in other cases were likely electrical strikes, either from a massive outburst from the sun or a close approach of Mars to the Earth.
I mean, that's got to be some crazy lightning, that's going from planet to planet. I mean, that's just insane to think about.
Well, it's because they're moving closer to one another, and every planet has its own electrical field. So the interesting thing is a lot of the ancient scripts, like the Rongo script and the Easter Island scripts and all these other ancient cultures, actually show you most of the plasma formations that you would only see in a planetary thunderbolt or a really massive solar outburst. And there's something like 32 different plasma formations, and of those, you see everyone in the ancient scripts except for the ones that would kill you if you saw them.
All right. And I Love You says, are we going to hear more about Seriah's strange experiences? So you'll have to take, I guess, your strangest one and throw it at us now.
Oh, God. There's a few that qualify as that.
Was there one that maybe scared you half to death?
No. Things don't tend to scare me. I have this disconnect when I have these experiences. So we were, when I was a teenager, we had built this bench that was on the edge of a potter's field for a insane asylum that overlooked Seneca Lake. And we would just go up there and hang out. It was, literally it was this cliff that was like 30, 40 feet above the lake. And one day we're up there. This happened during the day. and three of us are standing there, and there's this tree between where we are and the field. It's not like a huge tree, but it's thick enough that we can't see through it. And all of a sudden it starts moving, and we're feeling like this thumping on the ground. And my first thought is, this is a deer. It's a deer running towards against the tree, and it could be dangerous. I mean, if it's a big buck, I mean, who knows how it's going to react to us being there. Maybe it's even doing it because it hurt us. And so my other friend starts freaking out, going, what is that? And I'm like, I think it's a deer. And I walk along the side of the trail so I could see the other side of the tree, and there's nothing there, and the shaking stops. So he's like, what is it? And I'm like, there's nothing there. And I walk back, and it starts doing it again. So this time I not only walk down the trail, but I walk all the way around the trail and out into the field. There's nothing anywhere. There's nothing, nowhere anything could have run. It was a big open field. And he's like freaking out, asking me what it is. I'm like, there's nothing here. Absolutely nothing. I go back. It starts doing it again. Our third friend finally goes, what are you guys talking about? And we both look at him. We're like, the tree shaking? He's like, the tree isn't moving. So two of us experienced this while the third person sat there and experienced absolutely nothing. And then they both got freaked out and wanted to leave.
So did you guys leave, or did you check it out a little?
We left, and then I went back there, and I got sort of that eerie quiet you get, and something very large moving through some of the higher up trees, knocking big branches down, but there was nothing I could see.
Are you a Bigfoot believer?
I think there's a Bigfoot phenomena.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a flesh and blood ape, although there are certain areas where a flesh and blood ape might, like the Himalayas, there could be an unknown primate in that area. But like in New Jersey, probably not.
Yeah, there's definitely something weird going on in our woods, I suppose. I like the idea that there's something interdimensional going on. That or there's another idea that our consciousness just isn't able to see these beings. Like if we can evolve our consciousness and actually use our entire brain, we would be able to see all that is there, and we're just not able to see all that is there right now. There could be other beings living in my house right now. I just can't see them.
Oh, absolutely. There's a
There's
great quote, and I can't think of it what it is, from Arthur Macon, that says something like, we sit here at these still streams and these dense woods, and with what company?
Well, I hope if there do you believe in reincarnation, that we come back as different beings, or
I think that's a generally a fairly good possibility.
I hope in my next life I come back as an entity that nobody can see. I think that would just be awesome. So always taking somebody's keys and hiding them somewhere. But I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think about Bigfoot itself. I mean, it seems like wherever there's a piece of woodland, somebody is claiming that there's a Bigfoot in it now, and I think that there's a lot of money in Bigfoot podcasts and Bigfoot shows and things that, I mean, I guess.
Oh, people love Bigfoot. Absolutely.
Yeah. They're going to tune in and listen to any kind of Bigfoot story, regardless who's saying it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's a big problem. Even when you talk about UFOs or other cryptids, that you get a lot of people that I guess just want to sell a book, right?
Well, I mean, like the UFO thing, I mean, if you isolate out experiences, you could certainly make it look like there's a flesh and blood creature. Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner wrote their two-volume book with the footprints end, showing how it's actually more common to have weird stuff in these cases than just a singular physical Bigfoot sighting.
Yeah.
And that puts it in a completely different, if it's a physical creature, an animal, you shouldn't be having all this other stuff around it.
Yeah, and Chuck here says in the comments, where's all the Bigfoot poop, right?
Yeah. Or the bodies. I mean, with all the people looking for this stuff, even if they are skilled at hiding their dead or something like that, we would have found something. The fact that we have nothing, and with a lot of this stuff, that fact that we have no proof of any of it, suggests that maybe we're asking the wrong questions and approaching it from the wrong directions.
Yeah, and
When people go out on a Bigfoot hunt, I Joshua had used the term wilderness poltergeist to explain this idea that I had, that when you're out in the woods, these people hunting Bigfoot will get knocks, they'll get vocalizations, they'll get stones thrown at them. These are all poltergeist phenomena. And this is the most common thing people hunting Bigfoot get. So I suggested that perhaps what they're experiencing is a poltergeist in the woods, which he then named the wilderness poltergeist, which is a perfect name for it. And that stuff is generated by us. Poltergeists are psi energy that we generate. It doesn't mean something else can't take it over, can't maybe capitalize on that or utilize that, but I think that's where it starts.
yeah. Now, what do you think, Jared, about Bigfoot?
Well, I totally agree with the psi energy thing. Or was that what? Were you going to ask about the Bigfoot thing?
Yeah. Like, what do you think about? Do you believe that there's an undiscovered ape running around the woods in Pennsylvania?
I think the most extensive work that I've enjoyed, the approach of looking at what has been found that's worth discussing, is Michael Cremo's Forbidden Archaeology. He does a whole section on the findings around the country, around the world of the I think of the solid history available that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I think his research is the compilation of what got put into that is the best. And I only bring it up because beyond historical accounts, I think that I just find it, on one hand, it's incredibly easy to hide today in this world. It still is. On the other hand, it just seems kind of ridiculous that we haven't either found the bones, something, just anything. And again, it sounds kind of funny, but where's the poop? But where the hell's the poop? I mean, maybe they use bathrooms and they have their own like system. So what do I know? So they really don't. There's just not enough. Like, I don't have a problem with people discussing it or bringing up for all those who are new to the subject or want to know about all the different historical findings of the Yeti and the abominable snowman and whatever you want to call it. There's so many different legends and stories, but it's like little people, moon-eyed people, like we've talked about, the Cherokee moon-eyed people, to the little people in Europe, to Scott Walter when we talked about those, the little Hawaiian people, and like you said, from Rapa Nui to Scotland and Ireland, there's always little people somewhere. So it's the same thing. You got abominable and you got giants, and it's like, okay, we can go so far with this, and I said, I don't. There's nothing new. We don't find anything. It's the same stories.
Yeah, and Chuck Bam says, I debunk flesh and blood, Bigfoot. Bigfoot is 100% paranormal because no poop is found. Maybe Bigfoot only visits our dimension. I find that interdimensional thing probably more of a realistic possibility than that there's just a whole bunch of Bigfoots out there that nobody's seeing.
Sure, but we also don't know exactly what interdimensional means. I mean, we have no solid evidence of other dimensions per se. Like, it's a good theory, but like it doesn't help us along the road yet, because we would also have to explain what that is and how that works.
Yeah.
It comes down to explaining like the unknown with the unknown, which it doesn't make it wrong. It's just hard to go anywhere with it.
Yeah, there's been only so much evidence for anyone who has biological evidence. It all goes back to the same frustrating point: is if there is biological evidence and it is in the public domain, where's the philanthropy to sort it out? I mean, if you're in possession of it, it's just like Dennis Stone and America's Stonehenge. If you own a site and you are actually taking the responsibility 3 generations later to take care of it, or the people who own the site at Baalbek, where the unfinished quarried stone that everybody likes to stand on, that they've thrown 144 people on, that's a privately owned site. They're all over the world, and it takes money and it takes stewardship to manage these items. And here, if you have anything biological that's Bigfoot related. Part of the stewardship of that is, fine, call up any one of our shows, like let's get the conversation going to find the funding. I mean, it's and then do the biological testing, the DNA stuff, and see what you got. Do you got a raccoon cap, or do you got Bigfoot hair?
Well, they've done DNA stuff, and you have the controversy around Melba Ketchum, and you had one recently where they studied all the different hair, and the only thing they came up with that was interesting was an undiscovered bear in, I believe, India.
That's cool, actually. Though it's like that's 3,500 to 5,000 new things a year we discover. A lot of it's bacterial and fungal and stuff like that, but that's exactly a perfect point. You know, we think we've got this whole planet worked out, and we have been discovering that many things, 3,500 to 4,000, 5,000 things a year for 40 years. We've been documenting this, and that's a perfect example of, yet again, the constant need for exploration still, that we can still get out there. Like, I bring up Hyperion the tree, 380 feet tall. No one noticed it till 2008. That giant Adele penguin population, 1.5 million super colony in the Danger Islands of Antarctica that nobody noticed until a satellite image goes, there's 1.3 to 1.7 million penguins here, that no one noticed. And that's not a small amount. I mean, they're not like they're camouflaged, but we miss some really big picture items, and then we have everything underwater and every other forest and every other cave system. And there are incredible underground cave systems, incredible ones that go on for miles, and the expeditions to go. I was privileged enough to have a friend whose dad is a very famous splunker, and there's a cave system in Mexico he went down to. It was a 3-month expedition, and it was approximately 20 miles under a mountain range. And they had to set up multiple base camps, and people spent a week underground at a shot, and it's been known for 80 years. It's still not entirely explored. And again, we're dealing with what's above ground right now. Doggerland in Europe, I can't shut up about, between Ireland, Scotland, and France. There are millions of square miles all over the earth of land that's underwater that was above, that may represent, well, we know from what's off the far coast of India and Cuba and Japan and, well, everywhere, that it's not just the Egyptian cities that sunk or Greeks. There are ancient cities and places that we don't have an accurate snapshot of the land that humanity lived on. So that's a missing part of the story. And then we have all now admitted, it's mainstream news now, that there's a 14%, that's the new number, there's a 14% genetic missing human within our lineage, yet we have literally hundreds or thousands of Paracas skulls with elongated heads, with one suture line and 4 magnum that's different, and we don't test any of it.
Those were in Malta too, and they disappeared conveniently.
Yeah, isn't that great? It's like, at this point, it's an open conspiracy that's not a conspiracy. These are facts. It's like, if anyone listening, I mean, if you're involved with the university system and you have the audacity to say that you know what's up and you're teaching people, and these skulls are not hidden. They are all over South America. They are all over Europe. They're all over Africa. They happen. Then we're not talking people smushing heads with planks. We're talking real birthed, elongated skulled humans. A missing genome, and no one wants to take this up. It's just Brian Forster. It's just his testing. It's just, this is ludicrous. I'm just going to keep throwing this out every now and then, because I'm not the angry podcaster guy, but at the same time, it's like, we know what the mysteries are. The dialogue always ends with a polite, well, hopefully somebody someday. It's like, no, you multi-billion-dollar institution who say you're the elite center of elite learning of paleoanthropology and biology, you pick up the gauntlet and find out who the hell these people are. You have the money, you have the equipment, and you're not doing it, and there's a reason. And it's just,
they don't want to change the narrative.
No, it's and here's the thing. I keep saying it's like Vegas. I got super obsessed with it. This is directly related to Vegas, by the way. In 2002, I started watching every documentary about the history of Vegas, and one of the things was they and in that early 2000s, they decided to teach people how to gamble. They were afraid to teach people how to gamble because they thought that people would cheat more and then they would lose money. What they found instead is that people were not playing roulette and they were not playing the craps table because they walked up there and most people they didn't want to look stupid. They didn't want to know not how to do it. So people didn't gamble that could have been gambling. And once they taught them, surprise, surprise, they started making more money. And I think it's the same thing with these universities. Right now, they're waiting for people like us, people they don't think are part of their holy academic world, pointing out the obvious, that they're not doing the right thing, that they're idiots, that they're stupid, that they're being or just straight up academic hubris. Instead of worrying about this, will support you, and you could be the institution that says, we just found 4,000 facts in our own archives that we didn't table about human history. Come be at our university because we are changing the narrative. We are changing what we know of human history, and we are at the forefront. People could be banging on doors in a way that they can't even imagine if they would actually table the truth. People would actually take vacations. Instead of sending 8,000 people to eat too much sugar on a cruise ship, they would take the same cruise ship, but they could actually be part of an archaeological team digging out one of those pyramids and those 60,000 structures in Guatemala. And instead of just snapping a shot in front of something cool, there are a lot more people that could participate in actually unearthing our past, and not just with a toothbrush. That's my opinion. I think they could embrace that and not worry about being stupid. That's my pitch for it.
I don't know if it's worried about being stupid. I think that, you have these sort of gatekeepers who don't. They're like, this is our history. And I mean, you saw some of the early stuff in the Smithsonian when giant skeletons were being found. They literally put this thing out that giants were not real, and just to kind of get rid of the skeletons, because it pushes against the idea of just this simple evolution. It's not that evolution doesn't happen, but it's way more complex, and there's been a lot more complex life on the planet, and they don't want to have to admit they were wrong, and they don't want to have to rewrite everything. It's easier just to continue to toe the party line. And I think with these institutions, they realize they're going to lose funding if they say anything.
Yeah, it's you're totally right. It's just the big joke of archaeology changes at the rate of the death of one archaeologist at a time.
Yeah, one coffin at a time.
And that is one hell of a slow process. I often do the analogy of, so you spent 40 years putting a ticket back together at the counter at the entrance to Disney World, but you never excavated Disney World. That's great. You did it one pot, and the pot was important.
Yeah, I'm seeing comments in here that I guess YouTube's buffering pretty good. So I don't know. It's nothing on our end, guys. So if YouTube is having issues, I mean, I'm seeing here that it's a excellent connection. It says so. It shouldn't have any issues here. I don't mean to interrupt you guys, but I just want to throw that out there for everybody. Maybe try reloading the page or something.
Well, I've been catching your abominable /
Yeah, I'm trying to.
The Hendersons.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through some Bigfoot pics.
Do you find it odd that Land of the Lost, the original series from the 70s, had devolved sleeve stacks with crystal technology and teleporting doors? And I find that quite fascinating for a 70s show.
Interesting point. You know what drives me nuts, though, is when you constantly see shows and movies that depict woolly mammoths in icy areas. Like you see a flashback to the Ice Age, and there's this caveman and this glacier and a bunch of woolly mammoths, and it's like they didn't live on glaciers.
No, it's like, hey, I was eating something fresh and hay-like any decent, loving, warm, climated elephant, but hell, I just wandered off into the Arctic tundra. I'm going to eat nothing for weeks.
Right.
Just... What? Yeah. What were they doing? And the MWDLW, like the what was that?
What could have flash frozen them like that?
That is interesting. Is it that they flash froze? Is it that they froze, but you gotta wonder if they were standing and really did flash freeze, or did they just drop in an instant and the climate had changed and they froze, but were they alive? I mean, were they standing? Were they functioning when they died? Or did they die and then get frozen quickly? I've debated that. Was it some sort of weaponization, or was it really a pole shift? But people tend to, I don't think, did they get knocked down, knocked out, and frozen? That's, I guess, the questions I play around with on the subject. It sounds like we're getting more chat about the bandwidth problem and the delay. So it looks like, Michael, you got it covered, or what do you think it is? Is it YouTube?
I mean, I'm looking at it while we're in here. Just, I guess, just go on with it, Jared, and I'm looking on it on my end here.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. What do you think happened as far as, do you think it really was a flash freeze, or do you think everything died and it shifted?
It's hard to say.
I think it was postmortem.
Huh?
Do you think it was post-mortem, or do you think they really died while they were eating?
I don't know. I mean, if they didn't die while they were eating, they definitely had to be preserved pretty quickly afterwards, because the stuff was still fresh in their stomachs.
Right. Well,
the mechanisms to do that. I know Art Bell and Whitley Strieber, the Superstorm, came up with the theory that these were like cold bursts that came down from space that froze them, which was an interesting concept.
What came down?
I forget exactly what they called them, but basically it was a burst of ice cold air that would come down from the upper part of the atmosphere, and it would instantly freeze everything.
That's interesting, because I know about all the fresh food and they seemed to all be alive and then they were dead, and I was thinking it was more of a shock wave maybe, but the idea of some sort of super cold front. I mean, I'm in Minnesota. We hit, it's been 3 years now, and we hit actual temps of 35 to 40 below in the Twin Cities, and then with wind chill we were at 60 below.
Oh, man.
And normally International Falls, which is in Minnesota, gets to be called the icebox of the Northwest, or of North America, and International Falls hit some crazy low temperatures, but we definitely hit. I mean, it's funny to throw a bucket of water and watch it freeze. It really is cool. But
yeah,
if it was 6.
Go ahead, guys. I was just gonna say, as far as the stream's concerned, I see people in here are some of them it's fixing it to just reload the stream, but I think a lot of it has to do with, I mean, we're in the middle of an ice storm over half the country, so I'm sure that the internet's probably not at its full go right now. If you can't handle the live buffering and everything that's going on, just come back later, I would suggest, and give it a re-listen if you want, you know. Otherwise, we're just gonna have to deal with it. I think I've been looking at a lot of this stuff online, and you know, the internet's not 100% right now because of the ice storms all over the country. So we're just gonna have to deal with it.
Because of the ice storm, everyone's home.
Yeah.
The internet, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. If you can't handle the buffering, you know, either come back, or you can always check out the episode on Apple iTunes when we're done here. I'll upload it over there, so there won't be any issues with it buffering over there. But everything's going through good on my end, and everything is recording good on my end. So you can always come back later and check it out if it's too troublesome to bother with right now. So,
well, I'll just type it out. Sorry for the load.
Yeah.
All right. So I like the idea of an ice cloud, but do we have any other record of that happening? I mean, I know we don't have all-seeing eye when we pull up cores from the Arctic Circle or from Antarctica. Do we have any other indicators or examples of some sort of weird flash Earth freeze
No, I
in
think
some other.
they were talking about it as a massive shift in the entire weather pattern of the planet. You know, like this is what ended the ice age, was this sudden shift in climate that caused some areas to go ice cold, and this was part of how that happened. I mean, honestly, to me, the pole shift makes a lot of sense, because you look at like Siberia, that wasn't cold during the last ice age, and you look at lesser Antarctica, that wasn't cold during the last ice age, and that doesn't make any damn sense until you move it where the Hudson Bay pole is at the north of the planet, and suddenly everything falls into place, and it's like, okay, we may not know exactly how it happened, but that pole shift is a pretty simple explanation for what happened.
Yeah, the question is, I know we really got a lot more narratives going now about the Younger Dryas, and 10 and a half, 11 to 13,000 years ago, there was something terrible. But I like to talk about that city off of Cuba. I wrote about it in the book, but just that, well, it doesn't matter. The cities like Graham Hancock dived in the 90s off of India, and the other places like Bimini Road or not in the Caribbean. There are definitely places that were above water 50,000 plus years ago. And
right.
I do think that there was something. I think that the Younger Dryas is really the baby stepchild of whatever happened 50, 60,000 years ago. Because we also have this weird genetic record that says a common mainstream knowledge is Denisovan and Neanderthals mixed with humans approximately 50,000 years ago. Well, there's a little bit of a swing in there, and it's not like they built a city, giant megalithic pyramid city, for it to be buried at 2,300 feet deep in the water if something just absolutely dramatic didn't happen with the plates, with the pole shifting. And it's kind of easy now, looking at the diameter of the crater in Greenland, to look at, I think frequently not talked about, I grew up, of course, the big deal was the theory around the giant Yucatan Peninsula dinosaur killer. That was it. That was the one that did it. It was the Yucatan asteroid or giant meteor. That was what killed the dinosaurs. But then now we have a 19-mile wide crater in Greenland, but we have one off the southern tip of India that is just brutally terrifying. And we have many other impact sites, and I'm sure we'll discover more. And it does make me wonder if any one of those could have hit and thrown the planet or spun it off its axis. Maybe that was the hit hard enough to do it. I don't think it's a solar flare that would do something like that. I think a solar flare is either going to take out your Tesla. I think people should consider driving an all-electric vehicle that's affected by EMP, but I don't know. Just side note. Just saying.
What we should be doing is protecting the power grid from EMPs, and we're not doing that, even though it's not something that would cost a whole lot of money.
No, it's so interesting that the actual infrastructure, no matter where it is, it's very elementary. And I do like that there's more and more conversations about dielectricity, about Tesla, about magnetism, and can Wheelers work, and what's going on with our understanding, our comprehensive, total understanding at a general level. It's so weird that I think everybody out there has to rely on you and me and Michael to have a general dialogue and then go out and self-study and experiment, that we don't have an educational system that teaches wisdom and a fundamental basis to question and to go out and have a hunger to learn things. But then we have an entire scientific, the system that we're set on to work to move the sheep along, like you said, and make us general consumers, relies on this system that is barely functioning. I live in the Twin Cities. It was, how long has it been now? 10 years or 15 years that we had a major bridge in our city just drop into the Mississippi River. It was the 35W bridge, and they're like, oh, how did that happen? And it's like, really, how did that happen? How do you think it's going to go down when we're doing an electrical grid system that, again, ties to an invention that we still chop fully grown trees on city streets rather than figure out a more creative way to run the wires? We'd rather destroy what used to be understood, even with the great industrials. So they planted elm trees Do you find it interesting that in every major, I don't know how it is anywhere else. I should only say this to the cities because we have so many lakes and rivers, but if a tree becomes substantially grown, it always magically has a disease that requires it to be cut down. Everything is always replanted and young. Nothing within an urban and humanism, our environment, they never allow anything of old growth to stay connected. They always destroy old growth trees. And it's getting to be a little bit it's on my radar as something that I find quite interesting outside of the fact that we have an electrical grid and electrical poles as if we just invented power and they're snuffing out gas lamps right now still. It's just what
Well,
a system.
I used to live in Myrtle Beach, Jared, and they ran all their electrical wires underground. There's not a single telephone pole anywhere in the city, and
And that's how it should be.
yeah, we had a hurricane when I was there for when Hurricane Floyd came through. As bad as that was, it wiped out power and flooded everything like all around us. But Myrtle Beach, we never lost our power one time. It never even flickered, and it was a Category 3 hurricane coming through.
Yeah, see, those are the things. This is not like we don't have. There's a whole system now. I was impressed. I had a friend who worked for the oil company, and he was an MWD, LWD, which is logging while drilling. And the MWD, they actually joked was called movies while drilling. And these drills, we're talking 2, 3, 4, 5 miles. These drills are directional. The drilling that they're doing into the earth for oil exploration and connecting to areas that they want to pump are incredibly complex. And it's the same ones when people see those giant coils. The simpler version is when you see those giant coils where they jam the rods and they directionally drill under sidewalks and in urban areas to get cabling through. It's almost the same concept, but there is no significant total urban planning for the future. Like, oh, every city still has forefathers. Every city is supposed to be planning out a greater design and a greater system, but it's not more connected. It's satisfy the sheep, occupy the sheep, entertain the sheep, and or get them consuming, but it's not in an inclusive, elevated, we are connective, collective that could use walkways and exercise and parks and waters, like the frequencies and sounds, not in just a woo-woo way, but the way that we are, well, we like to run around a lake. Yeah, there's a reason we feel drawn to water, but could we have a structured waterfall? Could we, the Gronder work that was done where they studied children around the ionization around a waterfall as the water's coming down and the breathing and the playing in that areas. And I think that we don't have urban planning that incorporates electricity, water consumption, not just for the sake of getting clean water, but again, we have aquifers here that I can go collect water from that are highly mineralized, very alive water, in quotes, for everyone who understands structured water and Schauberger's work and Gronder's or all of it, where you're not just jamming really dead water through just a general pipe system. This is something that we could work on collectively, because we are what are really young but old ways of thinking. The way we've urban planned is, well, great, we've given ourselves all these nice things, as in access to all these technologies, and we can go to the gym and we can go to a movie and we can go to a bar and we can go shopping, but it's very disconnected from a continuous way in which we could live that would profoundly affect our health and our mindsets and our connectivity on these other ways. It's not like we're going to bulldoze like square miles of every city and bury every wire, but I think there could be a more aggressive planning on it. But then now I think all of it comes back to what you've already stated about it being why change the system for the few people who think it works for their wallets? I don't think they're changing it. They're not.
It's like we set up a certain way our infrastructure is supposed to be, and it'll cost too much to get off of that way. Like all these telephone poles and telephone wires everywhere, and The electrical grids is all above ground. Even if we just spent $1 million or $2 million a year, as small as that is, and started doing it, maybe in 100 years or 150 years, we can have it done. I get that, like, the whole cost aspect of not improving our infrastructure, but
But
Well,
it's
there's been too many
also
studies too done around people around high-powered lines and getting brain cancer and assorted other effects from living near these giant power lines that are running across the earth. I think there's something to be learned that we have not reverse engineered, or again, maybe some military units have, but the Nazca lines, the Jordan, the Bolivian Nazca lines, there are Earth circuits on this planet. Clearly, somebody figured out how to manage this on a global scale with lower frequencies, whether it's to directly communicate or terrifying scalar weapons and other strange and nightmarish technologies. The reality is that we could design a power grid and continue to build. We're building whole suburban sections even here. I mean, there's multiple cities where the technology and look at it this way, we're not actually saying to make less money. I think we're actually saying, hey, you governments and federal governments should fund these experimental companies and et cetera, to bury on an elementary level, bury the power lines, but make them within an energy grid, and or as we plant and plan for old growth trees, and again, not just run along a river and a waterway and a pond, but could we have more access to directly 35 to 100,000 year old filtered water that's highly nutrient based on people who do water research? Could we be doing more of a design to just, as you move, it's not just that you have a sidewalk and you're not going to be hit by a car? Could it, there are just mindsets around exercise where it's an event, you have to go exercise. It's not just an activity by proxy of just being out, or that it's a natural setting for the way we interact with animals and the biology. I'm not just saying a beautiful flower garden and have your dog on a leash. I'm just
yeah.
Just,
what were you going to say, Seriah?
well, the other thing that keeps us resistant to change too is it's always the money, but it's layered. So, like, the company that does A relies on these four companies to get their stuff. And those four companies have an invested interest of things staying the same way, so they keep getting their resources used. So, like, when you're doing telephone poles, the lumber industry, of course, is where they're making the money out of doing things like telephone poles and stuff like that. So they're going to lobby to not have anything be done that is going to take any money out of their pockets, and that works across the whole system. So it's not just one person not wanting to change, it's the whole system not wanting to change.
So it sounds to me like we need to come up with a lobbying firm that represents the American people and not just a company.
Yeah, well, that takes a lot of money, and the people that have a lot of money are the ones running everything.
Yes.
it is kind of I think there's still a crap load of money to be made for everyone and for them, I think. But again, it's introducing new formats to do it. It's not a desirable thing. It's the same thing with, as something as current as, do I dare say, Bitcoin? That was a ludicrous idea. It's like, you're going to do what? And has no value, but it's now got value.
I wish I'd spent $1,000 on Bitcoin back in 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Nobody saw that coming, and I do think that there are some freak economics of how it comes through, but I do think a radical shift. I have a background doing design, build, and historical remodeling for 20 years, and I've thought long and hard on movement and the way it's not about just creating a common garden space. It's the ebb and flow of the actual the mechanics of vibrational medicine includes the actual energies around us that are created by all living things, and how the ebb and flow of the very soil you use, and how whether you're earthquake proofing or disaster proofing, but more with momentum and intent towards a healthier and better living, includes not just the mechanics of how you grow your food and walk around, but also how you socialize and move within a community. I don't think we're set up for that. We have our little rat's nests, and we have our little we definitely have an environment here in whether it's in the city or the country where we're very, I think, you're connected within a family unit, but you're very disconnected, I think, overall, despite the close knit environment of an urban environment or even a small town where everybody knows everyone. I don't think either are the correct marriage for us between each other and earth and nature, but it's a complex problem that doesn't get wrapped up here in 23 minutes.
All right. Well, we're actually we actually got about 15 minutes left, and I want to talk to Seriah about magic.
Okay.
And it seems I might be wrong, but it seems to me, I guess from what I've been researching about you today, that you know a little bit about magic.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's a real thing that people that is out there? I mean, do you?
Yeah, I think that we actually change reality all the time. We're just not conscious of doing it, and magic is sort of one of the techniques we can use to gain some control over that.
So, do you mean like people getting together and making spells, or
It can be anything. I mean, and even down to, there have been scientific studies on things like prayer, where they show that prayer seems to work regardless of who you pray to. And to me, that's no different than someone casting a spell or doing whatever. Like, if you have the belief there, you have the ability to perhaps change reality a little bit.
So it's like manifestation, really.
Right. Yeah. Because I think reality is very morphic. I think it's there is some level of it that is a shared reality, and there is some level of it that is a very personal reality, and you have the ability to shift those things.
Okay.
I also don't think that time works the way we think it does. I think it can work in both directions.
Like forward and back?
Right. That you can affect the past as much as you can affect the future.
Well, that would be interesting. Do you have any examples of that? Would that be like a Mandela effect type thing?
It could be like a Mandela effect. I have a big theory of that would take an entire show to even explain, but a short version of it would be something like this. When you have banshee encounters that are basically premonitions of someone dying, what we know based on psi research in the labs, I would say what's actually happening is the person dying, your experience of that person dying a few days later, creates an emotional reaction in you that literally sends that information back in time. So it's not a premonition so much as the dying created the premonition that gets sent back in time. We don't pick it up directly, and instead manifest it as poltergeist activity, hence a banshee, a vocalizing sort of poltergeist. But we know what it means. That family line has that because maybe it's a genetic thing. Maybe it's because they've told each other about it. It manifests in a similar way, and you go, oh, someone's going to die. But they've already died, in a sense. Like, you're getting that emotional response you're going to have when they die. I don't know if that makes sense. It's hard to think about that way. Like, the future event is actually the first event affecting the past.
Couldn't you then change it?
I don't know. Free will and stuff like that is a really interesting question. And I don't think there's any real easy answers because we can't, we seem to get one decision that we're aware of,
Yeah.
And with the case of a banshee, you don't always know what it is, it could be someone that's been sick for a while or an accident. It's not giving you any real information other than there's emotional tension coming.
Do you think that our reality is manufactured?
It could be. It could be a simulation.
Yeah. Yeah. I spoke with, I guess, Anthony Peake with his simulation theory. I don't know if you ever spoke with him. He's a fascinating mind on simulation theory.
Yeah, Anthony's fantastic. I've never had him on. I keep meaning to, and I just haven't yet.
Yeah, he's quite the conversation. If you can get him on, it's definitely blow your mind. Well, I guess I guess we're just gonna go ahead and let's wrap up. Seriah, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, wheredidtheroadgo.com. That has all the shows. It has links to our Discord, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everything. And every show since the first one I did over 8 years ago is up on that page. Um, so I mean, you even though you can subscribe on like iTunes and stuff like that, the RSS feed only goes back so far. But everything right back to the very first show, which was on simulation theory. Which is what's his name? He wrote The Universe Solved, and that's basically a simulation theory type of thing. Was the first person I had on Where'd the Road Go? So everything is up there.
All right.
From then to now, we do at least one show a week.
Yeah, and it really is a fascinating show. I've been listening to it for, I guess, well over a couple years now, and especially lately because when I do my research, I think I told you this pre-show, but whenever I do my research on a guest, I always put their name into YouTube and try to listen to some podcasts that they've been on, and they've, 8 times out of 10, they've already been on your show, and I'm listening to your show, doing research on who I have on my show, and I just thought that everybody could get a kick out of that. So definitely go over there and check out the show. The link will be in the description box down below. Jared, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm at notaliens.com. Of course, I'm on Amazon too. If you want to pick up the book for a few bucks more, you can get it on notaliens.com. We have our member area, our exclusive member interviews. Of course, we have our conflict code for a book, a conflict bumper sticker, and more exclusive content where we don't get to say things here that we can say there. And of course, this was a good time. It was fun getting on with you guys. So
yeah, and
thanks for being on.
The link to Not Aliens will always be in the description box below, just for everybody else. We were going to have Sev Talk on Thursday, and something happened, and we rescheduled her for later on in the month, so I'm not sure who we're going to have on Thursday. It seems this snowstorm has just put everybody all out of whack, and we're not done. I guess we've got more and more coming. So, I guess just remember you can always find us on www.conflictradio.net. We're on Apple iTunes and Spreaker and all of your normal podcast catchers. That's going to do it for us tonight. Batten down the hatches and be safe.